Okay, welcome to the Andy Porter Psychic Surgeon podcast. So, this is where we explore spiritual protection, energy healing, and the unseen forces, I guess, really, that shape our lives. So, I'm very fortunate this week to have Laura Hoorweg on with me from Canada. So, we've had a quick chat and we're going to get going basically with your bio, I guess, Laura. So, do you want to just give us a quick bio update as to who you are, what you do, and why we're here, I guess?
Okay, well, I'm a spiritual counselor and intuitive coach. So I'm a psychic medium, and I really just help people make their lives work. I help people through transitions. I help people with their businesses. I help people through their relationships. So pretty much anything that you're struggling with, anything that you want to transform. I usually work, and I also have another side to myself because I am also a medium. So I help people to deal with grief as well. So that's another part of my practice. I'm not an evidentiary medium, but I do use my mediumship to deliver healing messages from the other side to people on this side.
Yeah, which I think is a great position to be in, really, when we all know that, we're all here for a short period of time. We all know that we're going to pass at some point. And then, of course, when we do have loved ones that have passed, I think it's quite nice that at some point in your life, you can kind of find a medium to reach out to provide that kind of that understanding, really, that your loved one has passed. They might not be here physically, but we can still communicate with them. We can still talk to them, and effectively, they're just in a different spiritual frequency, vibration, different words for different things. But I tend to call it spirit, really. Other people call it home, and we've all got our terminology. But I think we're
Yeah.
in a position that people like yourself obviously offer the opportunity for people that have been bereaved or have bereavement affecting them, that they can, try and get into contact with that loved one that's just recently passed. So, what do you kind of enjoy the most about your job, really? Obviously, there's lots of facets to what you do.
Oh, I guess it's when I find that people have really made a shift, whether it's that healing or getting over their grief, or whether it's moving into the next phase or transition of their life, or helping them to really understand. I work with a lot of people on finding and getting deeper connections to their authentic self because we all get brainwashed. We come in, as we know, with a plan. We make a plan before we come into each lifetime. And often that plan gets either diluted or distorted or whatever for everyone by the conditioning, and I also call it brainwashing, that goes on that starts basically as soon as we come into this world. Because we're continually taught to uh, we're continually shown who we should be instead of who we really are. And it's a real shift to get away from who we're told we should be and who we really wanted to be when we entered this lifetime. So that's a big part of things for people. And I find that when people, people always want to know what their either their mission is or their passion or whatever verbiage you want to put on it. But it's pretty hard to find that if you have not got a deep connection with your authentic self. If you're still going through life with this mask on of what other people have told you that you should be, it's pretty hard to find your purpose.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think. And I quite like the way you said that. It does happen really from very young. We start to have
Hmm.
these overlays, social overlays, cultural, religious, the
Yep.
backgrounds that we come from. And obviously our parents are the biggest programming system that we get as youngsters, really. And I think it's
Yes.
only for me anyway, I think it's only when you get kind of older in life you start to realize that you've got all of these overlays that aren't you, really. And they're not things that you believe and things that you agree with. And then you need to start unraveling those sort of layers of the onion and taking off the bits that hold you, I guess. And that's for me when, that kind of spiritual realization pops up that, to be authentic and speak your truth, you have to believe what you say and what you do, and you have to be that person. And that's a very different
Right.
person from the one that you were kind of manufactured into from school and college and social and cultural overlays, really.
Well, even so much as like our professions. Like I've had clients who spent hundreds of thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars to become a doctor. And then they go through all this schooling and all this time and all this preparation, and then they actually get to start practicing, and they realize, like, I never wanted to be a doctor. So, they were basically talked into it by their parents and by socialization and thinking that this would be a good career and they make lots of money and all those other socialized things. And then they actually get to start doing it and they realize that it's really not what they really want to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, it's the sort of parents that kind of push you in these different places, isn't it, really? Because I think
Yeah.
for me, really, when you're growing up, your parents have jobs, and that's the jobs you understand and hear about because that's what you talk about at the dinner table. And then you kind of generally get kind of pushed into following their footsteps. And people that come from those sorts of backgrounds, that come from doctorate levels or college level kind of degree qualified, get pushed into universities and degrees and things. And
Mhm.
maybe it's not really them. And I guess it's only when you get older that you sort of stand up and think, who am I and what am I here to do?
Yeah,
Because
what is it? Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not that really. So just going backwards in time, Laura. So you had a very early experience at 11 that I'm quite intrigued to hear about, really, if you don't mind
Oh,
sharing.
yeah. Well, to get into to understand the story, you have to realize that I actually grew up in a family that was not religious at all. It just wasn't part of our tradition. And all of a sudden around I was like 10 or 11 years old and I started wondering, I where do you find God and the angels? And of course, at that point in our sort of Judeo-Christian atmosphere, everybody told you that God and the angels was basically you had to go to church. So my family wasn't going to take me to church because they weren't church-going people. So luckily enough, I happened to live in a neighborhood where there was like at least 5 or 6 different churches within walking distance of my home. So I decided every Sunday, and you can tell that this was a while ago because kids wouldn't be allowed to do this these days. I dressed in my, Sunday best, my little patent leather shoes and all that, because that's what you did in back in the day. And every Sunday morning, I went off to a different church. And, after exhausting the churches in my area, I realized like I'd met some really nice people. I'd heard some really nice music. I'd met some not so nice people. But I realized that God and the angels were definitely not at church. So then my search continued, at least not for me. Okay. Some people, that's their thing and that's fine. It just wasn't mine. And what I learned as I went on and started getting a little bit older, I went into guides and I was in brownies and guides and all that stuff. And I started doing a lot of things outdoors. And I started realizing the more and more I was out in the wilderness, that was my cathedral. That was my connection to spirit, was being out in nature. And so that is how I really connected to spirit, was being out in nature. That was for me. I think everybody connects in different ways, but you don't know until you try it, basically.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good way to frame it, really, because that is the whole thing, isn't it? When we're disconnected from people, then we see nature and we kind of see the world that we live in. I think when we're around lots of people and in urban environments and cities and cars and noise and things, we're not really able to experience life, I don't think, really. So I think the way you said that is actually quite a nice way to capture it.
Well, and now it's even more so because now we're surrounded not only by noise and other people and everything, but all these electronic frequencies and phones and you know Wi-Fi and all this crazy stuff. So it's even more so because everything's energy. Like if you talk to me at all, everything's about energy. Spirit, everything about spirit is energy. This whole universe is about energy. And it really, the type of energetic environment you are in really determines how healthy you are, how connected you are, how peaceful you are. So being out in nature, and when I say nature, yes, the more you can be outside, the better. But when I'm talking about nature, it's the more wilderness you can be in, which means totally out away from any kind of civilization, the more what's the word I'm looking for? The more authentic, the more natural the actual energetic vibrations are. So get out of the city, go as far as you can go, and it'll be much better.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it, really. Well, one of the things that we found, Jane and I, when kind of COVID came along, we were all kind of trapped in. I was working from home, so I didn't actually ever
Yeah,
stop working because I could work from home. But we used to sit outside and just look at the birds and the hedgehogs coming in the evening. And suddenly we kind of realised that, life has been so fast. When we're inside our houses, we're kind of isolated from what's going on. But when you sit outside and you watch the birds coming and they're
yeah,
hopping around the garden and there's hedgehogs wandering about and dragonflies and all. Suddenly you see this whole world that you don't even you see it, but you don't see it in your general life, really. And I think that was one of the for me that was one of the quite positive things about effectively that whole COVID lockdown scenario was
yeah,
reconnecting with nature again and let's sit outside and put some time into to not pick the phone up, not play with Facebook
yeah.
and things, and just literally observe what's happening around you with a cup of tea and a biscuit, and it's kind of quite a nice place to be, really.
I love that. Cup of tea and a biscuit. That's good.
Classically English.
I have a lot of friends. I know a lot of people from the UK, so I hear these phrases. It's funny.
That's what we do, Laura. We just sit around and drink tea, basically.
I know. It's not true, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds good, doesn't it, to be fair?
It,
It
it's so
does.
sweet.
So
But
what
it
was
is really true because I think, COVID, that's an interesting topic because it actually really woke people up in a lot of ways. Um, some people realize that it forced people not only to have experiences like you did, but it also focused people on really being with themselves because there a lot of the distractions like shopping and bars and movie, all those things that we distract ourselves with, those all went away. And some people had a really, shall we say, a positive energetic opening. And some people got into real trouble because without all those distractions, they just couldn't handle themselves, not only themselves, but their other people, their families. Oh my God, more marriage. Let's put it this way. More relationships either were strengthened, there was kind of like no in between. It's either your relationship during COVID strengthened because you got to know each other and you grew closer, or relationships apart because there was none of those things in between people to kind of soften the blow. And people were really forced to look at not only themselves, but their relationships.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's one of the things we saw really again,
Yeah,
doing the same type of work as you. We're obviously clearing people energetically, and we saw like a big upturn really in people that were reaching
yeah,
out for help because they were all of the distractions that allow them to live their normal life were taken away, and suddenly they were having to do a bit of a kind of soul search, really. And some of them, as you said, realise that the people they're living with are not people that they want
yeah,
to be living with, really. And of course, that means that there's decisions to make, and obviously that can be quite catastrophic from a family perspective. That people are,
yeah,
are not able to live together if they can't go out and see their friends and live separately. And I think like you say, it's a kind of a truth-telling time for a lot of people, really, is to introspection, I guess, into your life. Am I living the life I
yes,
want, or am I living a life that I don't really want, but I just go along with it because this is where we are with things, really?
yeah. Yeah, it was quite a watershed, and I think it's still happening. I think it was kind of it's like COVID was the ignition point, and then everybody kept talking about getting back to normal. Well, there was no normal. It was the new normal, which means things progress from there. It's not like you can just go back and everything's all the same. It was very distinctly different. And that in of itself was really quite a shock to a lot of people. And like I said, COVID showed me that there really wasn't any in between. It's either one there it was a time of extremes. It's either one way or the other, and there's kind of like very little gray area. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Did you find that with your clients? Did you find that you were attracting clients that had,
Yes,
yeah,
everybody else, there was not everybody else, but there was a lot of people complaining about their businesses. Of course, we're not going to sugarcoat it. There was a lot of people who lost their livelihoods. There's people who lost their businesses. There's people that lost their employment. But during COVID was fantastic in terms of the number of clients and the people that I was working with. Because as you said, people were doing a lot of soul searching. Some reached out because of soul searching. Some people reached out because they were just going crazy. They had all kinds of situations that they didn't know how to handle, so they needed a lot of help. So it was really good in that way. And the other thing was a lot of people opened up to themselves. And a lot of people started realizing that they needed to do something totally different. And that was another transition that happened. A lot of people totally changed their careers, what they did for a living, how they looked at their lives. It was very, very, it was amazing how many people did that. And that's still, that kind of catapulted us into this next phase that we're in right now. And honestly, we're about to switch over to a new phase. And
yeah,
that's
it
going to
feels
get
that way.
real interesting. I can feel that coming again, but it's going to be, well, my guides, this sort of started, it's funny how we're going back to COVID. This started during COVID, but it's going to really, my guides basically told me, and it was basically after things settled down, like in 2021, 20, maybe end of 2021, beginning of 2022, that the next pandemic, because there is going to be one, but it's not like the COVID. The next pandemic was actually going to be a pandemic of I just totally lost my train of thought. Mental illness, not physical illness, but mental illness. Because what COVID did was start that opening of people who were kind of just living on the edge and didn't they could ignore it, but then all of a sudden now they can't ignore it anymore. And it isolated people, and there's still people that are isolated even now. It didn't really switch all the way back.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think that, and that is your speciality, Laura, isn't it? Really, you kind of obviously are effectively a coach, intuitive coach. You're working with
Hmm.
people in that intuitive way. So people that come in from like places of burnout, stress,
Yep.
lots of hassle, I guess start to look for guidance, help. Is that how they find you generally? People that have kind of come to the end of their skill set, I guess. They've looked all
Okay,
lots of places.
there's sort of two groups again. One is people that are stressed out, burned out, going through either job loss, divorce, those big transitions in life. That's one set of people. Then there's another set of people who have come to the point where they want to have growth. They want to do spiritual growth. They want to find out about their spiritual gifts. They want to continue on a path to, I hate using the word enlightenment because people don't really understand what that means. But you know what I'm saying. They're looking, it's not that their life is a wreck. They want to take their life to the next level. So there's people that are in crisis. That's one set of people that really need healing. And the other set of people are people who want to progress to the next level. And both those have incredible value, and I deal with both those kinds of situations.
Did you find as well, Laura, are you more aligned to women really, like, high kind of functioning women that kind of find you and want that kind of intuitive help? Is that kind of where you sit in that space?
Well, okay, I've been around for a while. Okay. So, and I've been in the spiritual movement for literally decades and decades. Um, and in the past, you would anything that was attached to any kind of spirituality at all, you would rarely find a man. And if there were men, they were usually older men, like I mean 60 plus men. Okay. Thankfully, that is starting to change. And actually one of the biggest groups are young men, actually very young men in their 30s and 40s, who are all of a sudden showing up and doing a lot of things for their own spiritual growth. But yes, my particular practice is predominantly women. Now the men come to me in an interesting way. I have had some men that come directly to me, there's no question. But the vast majority of men that I work with usually come through what I call a significant female other. Okay. Which means wife, girlfriend, sister, mother, sometimes even work co-workers. But there's always a woman involved most of the time. Like I said, I do get some men who come to me directly, but I find it really, really wonderful that men in general are starting to open up more and more to just to the fact of evolving themselves, like looking into themselves and saying, hey, maybe I need to do some work in this area, maybe I need to do some work in that area. That is a very positive sign because trust me, that never, very rarely ever used to happen. And like I said, it was predominantly older men because they had gotten to the point where they figured out they better do something or they had the time, like, we're talking about older men that would be in their retirement years, that they had the time to start looking at themselves. Okay, so this is changing. So this is really good. I love the fact that young people are really becoming at younger and younger ages. Like I'm talking even young people in their 20s and 30s are becoming I don't know. It's like the effects of kind of getting their identity and their spirituality beaten out of them at a young age. That's literally what happened to some of these older generations. They're keeping their awareness, and they're instead of because back in the day, pretty much people had to get to about 50, at least 45, 50 before they even started thinking about this kind of stuff. And usually it was out of necessity because things started going really wrong in certain areas of their life. So this is what drove them to start exploring spirituality. But thankfully, that is not the new wave that's coming along. The new wave is the young people who realize that that's an important part of their life. And they're, instead of waiting to the last half of their life, they're actually starting to work on things in the first half of their life. So that gives me a lot of hope in it and for the future.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it. So do you kind of feel that what's your opinion? Well, the way that we see things now, again, rather like you really, is that the younger generation are more switched on spiritually. So they're coming in
Yeah.
with a task to do. And my guy Chen's always talking about these are the new ones coming through, the new shoots really that are kind of coming up after the fire's been and we've all kind of passed. These new ones are coming in with a bit of a job to sort out the negative stuff on the planet and bring this planet back into kind of equilibrium, which needs female energy and it needs a complete kind of change around energetically. And I sort of feel like the youngsters are this new, fresh, a lot of them don't want to work. And, we've got some in our own family that say,
Well,
they don't
that's a
want,
whole, yeah.
but what they're
That's,
actually saying is they don't want to work for corporations. So they don't want to do jobs whereby they're just making money for big corporates. They want to do more entrepreneurial, interesting things rather than
yes.
slave to a system, really. And that's kind of how
Yeah.
we're starting to see things is that the new generation, it's not they won't work, is they won't do the old jobs. And that's kind of where this big change, I think, is. Do you see anything similar from your perspective intuitively?
Yes, I do. I think that the older generations, like the boomers, were brought up with this kind of work ethic that you went to work because you needed to make money to support your family in whatever way that was. And it wasn't really about getting satisfaction for the job from the job. It was just about making money. Okay. Work was about making money, period. End of story. But I think now this changeover is meaningful work. Like we're not just the young people don't just want to work for money. they of course know that they need money, okay? Because everybody, at least for a while, I don't think we're going to hit Star Trek, no need for money for quite some time. Certainly not in our lifetimes, but that's another story. But they want to work, they want to contribute, but they don't want to just. They're not willing to. Oh, there's a good phrase. Thank you. Sell their souls for a paycheck. Okay, and that I think is what earlier our different generations have basically sold their souls for a paycheck, and I think the younger people aren't willing to do that. They yes, they want to work, they want to be productive, but they want to be doing something that they feel is heart driven, that they feel a calling to, that's going to help other people, that they enjoy doing. That's very different than simply working for a paycheck.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, isn't it? It's about
Yeah.
embracing energetically the things that you do and the way you put your energy, really. And I think, like you, we do this work full time as our kind
Yeah.
of normal job. So again, we're working with the ethics of integrity and truth, and we speak our truth, and we have boundaries, and all of the things that you don't have in your younger days. As you get older, you start to think this is the new version of me that I'm going to build, basically. And people don't like that generally. Most, I found. I'm
No,
sure
no,
you
they
probably.
don't, because there's still a lot of people, and don't kid yourself. It's not simply an age thing, because there are young people who are they're totally materialistic. They don't care. They just want to make as much money as they possibly can, as quick as they can. But that is a smaller and smaller group. And then there's the group that we were just talking about, that want to have meaningful work and want to make changes in the world for the positive. Okay. And the same thing with older people. There's people in the older generations that have wanted to do, people used to call them hippies, and, all this, there have always been, but the balance is changing. That's what's shifting. And I think, no, regardless of age, I think people are coming to the conclusion that everything's not about money. It's not about having another car. It's not about having a bigger house. We'd rather have a smaller place. We'd rather, have time. This is the one of the biggest things that's happening, is this recognition that how important time is. Time for yourself, time for your family, time to be with your partner. Because what ended up happening in past generations, for women, but also especially for men, is that they had a lifetime where all they did was work. And they had very little time with their children. They had very little time with their spouses. And that time was taken up by other things. So I think what's really happening is people of all generations are really realizing that there's a lot more to life than simply survival.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good way to say it, really. And I think that's one of the things that I think happened in COVID. People had time, which they didn't generally
Yes.
have. And of course, if you want to have a kind of successful relationship with a partner or family or anyone really, you have to
Yeah.
put time in together and you have to get to know each other and spend time. And sometimes when you do that, you might find that that person isn't the person you actually want to be with. But I think that
Yeah.
if you want a successful relationship, you have to spend time with each other and grow together over the years, which is really important.
Well, and anything, there's that old saying, anything worth worthwhile is work. People, there's still this, and again, of all ages, there's still people that believe. I have people still coming to me, and I know you're going to get this because you're doing similar work. There's people that come to me and they're looking for this magic pill to make their lives, to make everything in their lives work. And I keep telling people, there is no magic pill. If you're not willing to put in the time, the effort, and the work, your life's not going to change. There's a bunch of things that we can do with you and for you to help you make your life into what you want it to be. But if you're not willing to put in the effort, then it's simply not going to happen. And that is a huge thing. And that is part of the brainwashing of our modern world, is that instant fixes. Like there's an instant fix for everything, and that's not true at all.
Yeah,
It's
and that
not true
probably
at all.
comes from the pharmaceutical world, whereby if there's something wrong with you, you take a tablet or a pill and it's supposed to fix the
Yeah.
problem.
Well,
Because
that's a big part of it. Yeah.
yeah,
The other part of it is the financial system, because a lot of people believe that anything can be fixed by throwing money at it. And I'm going to tell you right now, very few things can be fixed by throwing money at it. And it's just like this whole idea of people believing that, shoot, can we pause just for a minute?
yeah, of course we can. Okay, so I guess, Laura, from my perspective, so when you're working with clients and people say they feel stuck, which I know is quite a common kind of terminology, really, what do you tend to see from an energetic level? Do you see interference or sort of stagnant energy? How do you kind of describe what you would see and how you then clear that, really?
Well, interestingly enough, I actually start my spiritual counseling sessions with a energy review. Okay. What my guides do is I go in and into we go into their energy, and what they do is they give me a picture, and the picture is like it's actually more like a video, and it's in a metaphorical archetypal form. And then I translate that, and that shows me what the energy, and it shows them what energies are going on in their particular situations. And sometimes it's things that they haven't even asked about, or they haven't even realized yet. In terms of energy, there's two kinds of energy. There's energy, you know this, but I'm just going to tell it because other people don't know.
Of course, yeah.
There's energy that comes from this particular lifetime. And then there's energies that are carried over from previous lifetimes. And a lot of things that people often think are from this particular lifetime, I find are often ancestral or karma, if you want to call it that, ancestral energies from past lifetimes, and also that have been carried through their lineage. Because one of the new things they're discovering is, well, we knew this before in the spiritual world, but the science is finally catching up. And one of the things is that they used to think that DNA was simply chemicals, okay? And DNA is not just chemical, it's actually energetic. And that's how you carry these energies from one lifetime to another. And that's especially where the ancestral karma comes through, because you're literally inheriting your parents' DNA from both lines. So a lot of people have issues from past lifetimes that have simply been reignited in this lifetime. So that's one thing. And what is really interesting is when it happens to be past life issues, just being just knowing where that energy is coming from, just the conscious awareness of that energy sometimes will dissipate and release that energy in of itself. I'll give you an example if you'd like from my own life. When I was a teenager, um, I used to, I had this ring around my neck, and it was like they thought I was told it was eczema, and then I was told it was psoriasis and blah 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 blah. And I had every doctor I went to gave me a different form of cream. Okay, some different kind of cream, and it would just about heal it, and then it would flash back again. It would come back, sometimes even stronger than it was before. Nobody could figure out what this was. And then a girlfriend of mine, because I used to wear a neckerchief to hide it because it looked ridiculous. It looked horrible. Okay. And as a teenager, you don't want this great big rash around your neck. And she says, well, take off the thing. She says, take off. I want to look at it. And she's looking at it and she's looking at it. And then she goes, you know what that looks like? She says, that looks like a rope burn. And so I went to the mirror and I went, you're right. It does look like a rope burn. And just knowing that, when I made that conscious realization, I was flooded with all these different pictures, and I ended up finding out that I had been hung, not just once, but multiple times in multiple lifetimes. And just finding out that that's what it was from, as soon as I made that conscious realization, the rash within, I mean, I'm not talking hours, but within a day or so, maybe 2 days at the maximum, okay? No creams, no, the rash was gone and it never came back again. And I had been suffering with this from for at least a year and a half, if not more. So this is what I'm talking about. Just knowing where the energies are coming from in a particular situation, if it's from a past life, that can dissipate and heal the energies right away. Sometimes we have to look at other things, and sometimes people need to do other things in their life, change, shift and change other energies. But I find with past life energy stuff, just because so much of our so many things are going on a subconscious level, and is all if it's on a subconscious level, you need conscious awareness in order to heal something. If you're not consciously aware and it's just sitting in your subconscious, you're not going to be able to heal it. That's why it's so important to bring, and I don't mean you have to relive things. There was this time for a while, okay, that people thought that you had to relive everything, and that's absolutely not true. And not only is it not true, it's harmful, because if you have people reliving things emotionally, you're actually re-traumatizing their system. Okay, there's been more damage done to people by doing this. And this is even when I tell my clients, if you keep reliving something in your mind, or if you keep telling your story over and over and over again, you are simply bringing those past energies into your present. Okay. The first couple of times you do it, yes, it can be healing because it can be cathartic and it can be part of the release of that energy. But if you keep doing it, you are simply re-traumatizing yourself and bringing those past energies into your present. So that's very, very important.
And so, which is a good point, and I total agreement with that because it's all energy. So again, when we do past
Yeah,
life regression with people, sometimes my guide will Chen will say, "Let's do a past life regression." Similar things that you're talking about, but again, he says the same thing. They don't need to experience the pain and the trauma
no,
because that puts them back where they were before. So
yeah,
quite often they can see things that have happened to them in a past life regression through meditation or guided meditation, but they don't need to connect to the energy, the pain and the trauma, which is the key thing. And I guess that's where kind of spirituality, I think, for me is well in advance of science, really, because science is still
yeah,
taking people, or psychology is still taking people through trauma, and as you say, re-traumatizing them. But if they
yeah.
know that these things happen to them in a past life and they can see that happening, but they're not connecting to the pain and the energy and the trauma, then they move forward really quickly and release that old energy and those old fears and things, which I think is a much better way to do things and a much forward way to do things as well, too, really.
Yeah, and it's really there for a while there was this past life regression hypnosis that was a big thing. And there's only actually a few people in the world who are actually, as far as I'm concerned, were trained properly in order to do this. Because you have to be very careful with this. Because when you're doing regression, you have to have the person standing outside of themselves, watching this like it's a movie. And because the problem with being in a hypnotic state too is you're very, very open to suggestion. And if you're standing inside, again, there's a difference between standing outside an experience and watching it and being in the experience. And the really not very good things that happen were people who were doing these kinds of things and didn't know that. And again, they were physically having people go through those emotions. Not a good idea.
Yeah,
And with my
definitely.
clients, you don't even like the thing is, I can go back and get that information for them. They don't even have to do it.
Yeah.
The simple hearing of what happened, and I've had people go, "Oh my God, when you hear something and it's truth, you know that it's true." Okay. Like people don't understand that their own systems are connected to this energy so that when they hear something, they feel it in their bodies, they know it to be true. They don't even have to see it for themselves. So that's a bit different too. Like we can be conduits for them and they don't even necessarily have to have that experience themselves.
Which is the whole point of coming to someone like yourself, that
Yeah.
you let a professional work you through the traumas, the pain, the things you've experienced in this life and other lives, of course, really. So what would you say is the most common kind of energetic problems that people are now dealing with that you kind of see on a regular basis, Laura?
One of the biggest, obviously, is relationship issues, whether that's with a partner or with family, children, or mothers, fathers, immediate family. That's a huge one. The other one is so rampant is self-worth issues because there was a lot, and this is a lot of stuff. We're going to go back COVID again. This is a lot of stuff that came up during COVID because people didn't really stop long enough to let that sort of settle within them. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't realize what it really was. And I can tell you, even relationship issues, pretty much 99.9% of the time when there's an issue, I can guarantee you that when you really dig through it, the root, this is why I love working with spirit, because spirit goes to the root of the problem instead, because traditional therapy, traditional counseling tends to do what I call putting band-aids on things, and that means dealing with symptoms as opposed to getting to the root issue. But the major root issue I see of so many different problems is self-worth issues and feeling not good enough.
Yeah, I
Because
think yeah,
self-worth, and people talk a lot about self-love. Well, I can guarantee you, if you've got a damaged sense of self-worth, you are never going to love yourself because you don't think you're worthy. Okay. And the lack of worthiness is probably the biggest single root issue of problems today with people
yeah, it's a good way
ever.
to frame it, really. And do you think that has a lot to do with social media? You know, we all see these pictures of the perfect man, the perfect woman, the six pack, all these things. Do you think it's just not
Um,
authentic and it's not reality,
I
really?
think okay, I'm going to say that I think a lot of those things worsen the problem and in some cases trigger the problem. But the more clients I deal with, and most of the clients over the years, if you really, again, go back to the root of their self-worth issues, it's from childhood. Okay. That period between basically 0 and 5 or 0 and 7, I'm gonna extend it to 0 and 7. Most of the issues that we have in our life that are unhealed all happened in that space. And there a lot of them are because they happened in that space, they are so buried that people don't even they think that other things happened, that it actually happened at another time in life. But those other issues were just triggers. They weren't the actual cause, the root cause. The root cause of worthiness or feeling worthless or not enough, which is a variation of the same thing. Um, all pretty much when I go into almost, like I said, 99% of people, it is things that happen to them in their 0 to 7 or in a past lifetime childhood. Okay. But it's still childhood. It's still early childhood. It all comes down to early childhood. And this is probably why we have so many problems in our modern society because our children are not properly raised, especially in that 0 to 7 age group. You look at how we treat our children in that, we force them into school or preschool and all that way too early. They're shoved in daycare. Okay, they're not properly parented. None of us was properly parented in that because the main one of the main things is feeling safe. And if you're put into a situation between 0 and 7 where you're constantly in fear because you don't feel safe, you are going to grow up with a very damaged sense of self-worth and self-love. Because being in the fear, there's nothing worse than being in the fear state. It's like I call it, it's like acid. And I don't care what age you are, okay? And this is what's wrong. See, this is what's wrong with, look at our world right now, okay? Everybody's in fear. The level of fear, I've never seen the level in all my life, and I've been around for a while. I've never seen the level of fear in the mass consciousness the high level that it is at right now. It's just massive. And it's a self-perpetuating loop because the bigger the fear level in the mass consciousness is, the more horrible things that happen on the earth. And the more horrible things that happen on the earth, the more fearful everyone is. You see where this is going? It's this endless self-driving loop. And it's bad. It's really bad. Now I think that's going to get better. Like I'm not I don't do fear porn, but and again, just really because a lot of people are afraid and they don't even realize where their fear is coming from. And if you're the least bit sensitive, a lot of the fear that you're feeling is not even your own fear. It's the fear coming either bleeding off people around you or from the mass consciousness. And people think it's their own stuff. And that's another thing that I really work on with people is learning how to discern what's your stuff and what's coming from outside of you.
Yeah. So do you think that's the biggest truth most people probably don't want to hear, really? Is that how you would kind of frame that?
Yes.
Because I imagine for most people it is the conversation, really, but everybody, well, like you say, everyone comes back to this magic pill wants someone else to sort their problems for them without looking in from an introspective perspective. Think,
Oh yeah,
you know,
because everything is somebody else's problem. And you know what well, see, this is backwards because if you realize that you create everything in your life, if you take responsibility for the fact that you create everything in your life, people go, "Oh, I don't want to do that." But guess what the reverse of that is? If you are creating everything in your life and your life sucks, then if you're creating it, you can change that. Okay? This is the reality. If you are the creator, then you can change the creation. If the result of your life is that everything that's happening to you that's bad is created by somebody else, well, then you have zero control. Zero control. So you can't change it. And it's not the truth. Okay. But B, it also leaves you in the position where if everything's being created by something else outside of you, then you have no control. But if you're willing to step up and say, okay, which is the truth, but this is the truth, that everything that's happening in your life is in some way created by you, or you are allowing it to happen, which is the same thing. If you realize that you have ultimate power over that, then you can change that. And that's incredibly empowering. Believing that it's all coming from outside you or somebody else is doing it to you, that's totally disempowering. And that's the problem with our world because people feel so disempowered because they feel like they can't change anything because everything's coming from outside of themselves.
yeah, it's the kind of way the system's been set up as well, isn't it? I think to a
Yeah.
certain degree. And like you say, taking your power back and observing if you've got a problem with your life, is a great way to sort of bring this conversation probably to an end. That, as you
Yeah.
said, the problems that you have in your life are because of you, not anyone
Yep.
else. And you have to manage it and take responsibility, and you need to find boundaries and basically speak your truth to people around you. And you generally
Yep.
find, I think, I know for me, when you start to speak your truth, everyone disappears around you because no one likes to hear that generally.
Well, I wouldn't say everybody, but let's put it another way. The people that shouldn't be there in the first place, they usually disappear.
Yeah,
Okay. And people, always say to me, well, there's this big thing. People are always talking. I don't know if it's in the UK, but definitely in North America. People talk about finding your tribe. Okay. Well, if you're going around speaking and not speaking your truth, you're never going to find your tribe, because the way you find your tribe, the way you find like-minded people is by speaking your truth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great way to say it, actually. I think this has been a really powerful conversation, Laura. So, from your perspective, how do people find you, connect with you? How can they work with you? Where's your online
Okay, well,
presence?
probably the best ways you can check out my website, number one, which is just www.spiritspeaks2, the number two, .me. You can email me directly, which is really easy if you want to set up a session at Laura Hoorweg at gmail.com. And I'm sure our lovely host, Andy, is going to put all my contacts in the show notes. So you can do that. I'm all over Facebook. I'm all over Instagram. I do a little bit of X. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm I'm around. I
You're
get around.
everywhere, basically.
I'm everywhere. I'm
You're
everywhere.
everywhere,
Well,
which is
not everywhere, but a lot of places.
perfect. Well, I'll do the same, Laura. I'll connect with you afterwards on Facebook and stuff, so we kind of
Yeah, for sure.
keep the
Absolutely.
connection. And obviously, as we kind of process it,
I have actually had, I see, I do everything. I do all my sessions except for mediumship work. I do that in person, in group situations in person, and sometimes within sessions. But all of my coaching and my spiritual counseling are done on Zoom. So I have clients all over the world, and I have clients in the UK, I have clients in Brazil, all over Europe, North America, um, all over the place.
yeah, and that's
This
a
is the
great
one
thing.
thing. This is the thing I love about this medium. And I'm going to say one more thing, because I get asked this question all the time. People think that it's much more powerful to do a session in person. That's absolutely not true. I've actually learned that doing like a Zoom call can actually be more powerful energetically, because I can control the environment that I'm in. You can control your own environment. So the actual energetic connection is often more connected, because when you're doing it in person, if you're out somewhere or something, or you're in somebody else's space, you cannot control those energetics. So I've actually found that the connection is actually stronger and deeper using technology than it is in person, which I wouldn't have said that before, but it actually is.
And also, of course, it opens you up to the whole world because you don't have to work with people in your local area anymore. You are
Exactly.
anyone with the internet can basically book a session, have a session. And we do the
Yeah.
same line. We don't actually see people in person anymore, which we used to.
No,
All of our work now is remote and disconnected because we don't need to be with people. And it actually works better if you're not actually, because you don't have that their energetics coming into your space, as you've just said, really.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
also, I think people open up more because they feel safe in their own space. That's the other side of the coin too. You get to stay in your own space as opposed to having to walk into somebody else's. So it's much better that way as well.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much, Laura. It's been great to meet you. I've enjoyed the chat, and we'll let you know when
Okay.
the podcast in a few days, probably 2 or 3 days, we'll get it online. We pop it on our YouTube channel, Facebook, and then goes out on the various
Oh,
podcast
awesome.
channels.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah, so
Spotify,
just let me
Apple,
know.
Amazon.
Send me the connections, and I like it too if you can send me, you use your base art for
Oh
the
yeah,
thing. That's all cool, because I like posting it on all my social media as well. So
perfect. Yep, we'll do that definitely. Well, lovely. We have a good rest of. Is it the what time is it there now? Is it your
it is about 12:40. It's lunchtime basically.
lunchtime? Yeah, perfect. Well, enjoy your lunch, and
Okay.
no doubt we'll connect again.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay,
Take care.
thanks. Sorry for the break, but
That's right. No worries. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.